All right, our first topic is writing habits. And I think there are two different schools of thought on this. One is that you write when inspiration strikes, and the other is that you need to get your butt in the chair and make writing happen. I don't actually know any successful writers who wait for inspiration to start writing, just like I don't know any marathon runners who only run when they're inspired to lace on their shoes. So let's agree that you have to have good writing habits and talk about some of the challenges to creating those habits and also some possible methods for overcoming those challenges. Matt, would you like to start us off? What challenges do you face?
Sure. So, I guess I'm more of the second camp, right? I believe that you have to sit down and write. So the hardest thing for me is building a habit and writing every day. So what I do, the first habit that I started building that helped me accomplish my goals is just setting a daily word count goal. So depending on how busy I am or what I'm working on at the time, I'll set a word count goal of 500 or 1,000 words a day, and I try to build up into streaks. So I'll write 10 days in a row or 60 days in a row to finish a draft.
Good. So when you do a writing streak, you aren't looking for like word count within a time frame, like building up to so many words per hour. You're talking about consistent daily writing. Yeah.
Consistent daily output is more important to me because sometimes it'll take me, an hour to get 1,000 words, and sometimes it's like 5 hours. So I know, though, that if I get 1,000 words a day, that after a certain amount of time, I'll have that draft finished. That doesn't mean the book is finished, of course, but that draft is done. And once I have that, that's like the foundation on which I can make it better.
Definitely. Do you want to comment on that, Kathryn?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to continue writing every day once you have a habit of writing every day. So if you have that 500 words a day and you hit it 3 or 4 days in a row, that fifth day it's like, I gotta do it. I gotta sit down and I gotta make it happen, because it's almost like you just don't want to stop with that little successes pile on top of each other and create really good positive flows.
Right. Definitely. I know one challenge I've encountered is a lot of writers feel like they can't sit down and start writing unless they've got 3 hours or 6 hours even blocked out in front of them. So I thought of this when you were talking, Max. You said some days it takes you 5 hours to hit 1,000 words, and I think we've all had those days, but what if you don't have a 5-hour chunk of time in a given day?
Right. Yeah. I think everybody's different, though. Some people have to write in the margins of their day when they're on the train or, early in the morning before they go to work or after work before they go to bed or something. Everybody's different. So, and maybe for you, the thing isn't to sit down and write 1,000 words every day, but just to sit down and write something. That could be just like the fact that you put your butt in the chair and started typing, mission accomplished, and then you can be satisfied with that. But the streaks are great because, like Kathryn said, on the 5th day, it's easier. Like, I just did 4 days in a row. I have to do this to keep it going. But as soon as you miss one day, the resistance to sitting down the next day to start the streak all over again is so much more difficult to overcome than if you've already built up the streak.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think that the biggest deal with that is that you need to set an achievable goal for the time frame that you know that you have. If you only have 2 hours in one day, maybe you don't set a goal that's more than 250 or 300 words, because you absolutely know every day there's no reason you can't hit that. And then once you start going and you can make 12 or 1,500 words, you just accept that as a greater success, rather than setting a goal that's like 1,000 or 1,500 words and then not being able to fit it in those 2 hours. So
yeah, I love that, Kathryn. That's a great idea of, it's like set a lower expectation and then you can over-deliver, so you never end up disappointed. You get to celebrate something at the end of the day instead of feeling like you didn't accomplish your goal.
Right.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a suggestion for helping with this writing in the margins of your day. I like that phrase, Matt. When my child was little, I could only write when I wasn't parenting, so that meant nap times and mornings and evenings, and if she had like the half-hour Teletubby show or something like that, I could write. And I had a table, like a kitchen table, that I commandeered. Nobody touched this table except for me, and I spread out all of my writing work on it. So I didn't have to put away or set up when I wrote. It was just there. So it was easy to go to the table and get my head in the game without a lot of preamble, without a lot of processing or trying to catch up with where I was last time I was writing. So even if you don't have kids or that kind of life, set up one place in your living space, one little desk. Don't make it cluttered. Don't have Wi-Fi there, Just set down your notebook or your laptop and write, and you're actually training your mind and your body to make an association. Oh, I'm in this spot, therefore I must be telling a story. Okay, type, right? Or write.
Right.
And there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Other writing challenges?
I have a challenge that's particular to maybe me and other people that work full time in things where you get home and your brain is exhausted. And I have found in my own writing habits that I am not motivated to or even feeling physically capable of writing right after I get home or even within an hour or two of getting home from work because I feel like my brain capacity has been exceeded.
Right.
So that would be a challenge when you're exhausted, mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. Where does that writing habit fit in and how can you make it work?
Well, I think you need to know your limits first off and rest your brain and rest your body when you need to, but find the time where you're most productive. So if you can get up an hour earlier and easily write 1,000 words as opposed to waiting till after dinner when you're sleepy and exhausted and you can only get out 200 words in the same time, it might be worth it to make getting up earlier the habit, or maybe your lunch hour if you can find a quiet place. Bring a bag lunch and go shut the door on the conference room or something. Maybe that's your most productive hour. What do you think, Matt?
I think that I've definitely faced this challenge, and the thing that helps me, the same way that I get to the gym when I'm exhausted after work, is just to break it down. So, if you're going to use the gym analogy, instead of saying, I'm going to go to the gym and run for an hour, you say, I'm going to put on my workout clothes. And then once they're on, you say, I'm going to get in the car. And then once you're in the car, you drive there. So you just break it down. So if you say, I'm going to write 1,000 words when I get home, don't set that huge of a goal for yourself when you don't know if it's even achievable. Make success smaller. So I'm going to sit down in the chair and open my writing program or pull out my notebook and pen. That's success. If you do that and you don't write anything, you've still won because you sat down and you've attempted the effort. And then, once you're there and you have the pen in your hands, you go, well, I might as well write a sentence, and you just write a single sentence. And if you stop after that, you've still won. But that goes back to the habits. If you do that every day, then one day you're going to sit down and write nothing. The next day you're going to write a sentence. The next day you're going to write a paragraph, and you'll build up to it. It's like building muscles or developing those trained reflexes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to do that exact thing with my yoga practice. If my practice was waning, I would set myself a 30-day challenge of 3 sun salutations a day, because I can do 3 sun salutations in 5 to 10 minutes. And there were days when I didn't even change clothes. I just begrudgingly laid out my mat and went through the motions. But most days, if you change your clothes, if you get on the mat, if you do that much movement, you're motivated to keep going. So It's a great analogy.
And one day, if you do it in slacks, you think to yourself, wow, next day I really need to put on my yoga clothes first.
I know, that stretch factor really makes a difference. Yeah.
And I think that point that you made earlier about setting yourself a real specific place, That's been really helpful for me when I'm exhausted too. Is I have a laptop, but my laptop tends to sit in the living room on the couch next to the TV remote. And if I'm mentally exhausted and the laptop is where I want to write, I don't write because I would rather sit and watch meaningless TV all night. But if I come and sit down at my desktop where the atmosphere feels like, okay, I'm here to work, then it's much easier for me to actually plug in and start writing, even if I am feeling like I'm mentally just tapped out. So having that place, again, very helpful.
Definitely. And you can always resort to the reward system. Excuse me. Natalie Goldberg in Writing Down the Bones has an essay in which she talks about her writing goal every day was so many words or so many hours. And of course, we're sedentary when we're writing unless you have a treadmill desk. So at the end of accomplishing her butt in chair time, she walked to her favorite cafe and she treated herself to a big chocolate chip cookie. So, you write, you move, you get your cookie, you walk home again.
Yep.
That can work for some of us.
Yeah,
definitely.
Just having a dedicated space too, like you don't want to put your writing space where you're spending the rest of the day working.
Yeah.
And your brain confuses the two.
Yes, very true. Okay, other challenges? Or
I think
tips,
the big
things you do to make sure you have good writing habits.
Yeah, I guess this is a challenge and a tip for me. The biggest challenge for me has always been to finish what I start. And I don't know if you're familiar with Heinlein's rules of writing, but one of them was to finish what you start, no matter what it is. So that's both a tip and a challenge, because if you finish what you start, then you can write something else. But the challenge is finishing itself, because oftentimes, the biggest problem I ever had is starting something and abandoning it midway. So when I set the goal to finish what I started, even if it was terrible, I started actually finishing and publishing stories as opposed to just starting and abandoning them. And of course, it's not the first draft that gets published, but it's the first draft that gets finished that's important.
Right.
So that's my biggest tip to new writers who have that challenge. I just can't get to the end of something. You just need to, at least for me, I needed to let go of that perfectionism and just finish it, no matter what.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I think it's easier to face the revision of a completed manuscript sometimes than it is to finish that thing that feels like it's stuck and going nowhere. If you can slog through that first draft, the rest of it doesn't seem as daunting.
That's a really good point. Too, a lot of people will start something, and if they don't have this rule, finish what you start, they'll get halfway and they'll go, oh no, I need to rewrite this. And at that point, if you haven't finished it, right, it's just another form of procrastination.
Yeah, and there are writers where that's part of their process, and they don't know. It's kind of like a mental block. They can't see what to write next until what's on the page is perfect. But not me. I would much rather get all the way through the draft, Yeah. See what's there, create the story, get the story down, right? Because there's so much polishing to do afterwards. Are you a finisher, Kathryn?
Yes, in that everything I have an ending, even if it's just an idea. Usually my ideas come full ending intact. So usually I manage to get all the way to the ending, even if the middle's all wishy-washy and gone. But yes. But one of my biggest tips, I think, and something that I've found that really helps with my writing habit is we're so in our heads all the time as writers, just constantly churning. I used to get really discouraged because I'd be like, oh, I had this great idea at 10 o'clock in the morning and now I'm writing and I don't remember what it is. And so I started keeping that journal with me all the time. And every time you have a thought, even if it's, oh yeah, that cool thing that I wrote last night, write it back down again, because it gets it back in your head and it gets it moving back through, and just continues that thought process, so that way when you do sit down to write, you're like, I've been here all day, I'm ready to go, I'm primed. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's easier to do now than ever before because everybody has a smartphone on them. I mean, a few people, I suppose, still carry flip phones, but now that you can type notes into your phone, that's really, really easy. And I do have a journal. I call it my creativity journal. It's just for jotting down ideas, and I don't carry it with me everywhere. But I was going through it last night, actually looking. I was going to write in it, and I got stuck looking at old entries, and I saw notes for novels that I haven't written yet that I completely forgot I had the idea for, and I'm like, oh, that's actually a good story. Oh, maybe I should write that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And even if you don't have the notebook with you, or I like having Evernote on my phone, but sometimes if you're driving or you're walking and you don't want to sit down and type, you can use the voice memos to just record a thought. That's a great way too, just to get it out of your head and into somewhere.
Absolutely. All right, one last tip. This one is obvious, but I think sometimes we have to hear things 10 or 20 or 100 times before we actually implement them. Right? It's that absorption process. So when you sit down to write, turn off notifications on your phone, turn off the Wi-Fi on your computer. Those distractions come at us from so many directions. So just cut them off at the source. Get your designated writing space. Find your most productive time. Make a commitment to doing it every day, just like you do exercise, just like you do so many other parts of your life. That was more of a summary than a final tip. So anything you two would like to add before we wrap this up?
I think that's like the best tip ever. I mean, even today I was writing and I found myself going over and opening Chrome just like out of like compulsive habit. And I had to say to myself, no, stop it, turn the Wi-Fi off so that when you open Chrome you get an error page,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's all about prioritization. Like if it's important to you, make it that important. Make it important above all of the other distractions and set it that way purposefully so that way your brain knows that's the most important thing you're doing at that point in time.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And there's nothing in your inbox or on the internet that is life or death. It will wait until you're done writing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good. All right. Thank you very much, Kathryn and Matt. That'll do it for the Storyworks Roundtable.